Hey everybody. So I was driving around and I had to pull over here for a second because all day I've been thinking about something that was touched on in a video that Danny and I did last night. And I don't think that, well, obviously not everybody saw, but also I don't think that there was enough attention put on it. We only talked about it for 30 seconds or so. But I've known for the past year, like battling through, since quitting drinking and going through the battles that I have personally when it comes to drinking. I've noticed over the past year, and I've touched on it before, how drinking ketones has helped. And I've talked about how it's become my happy hour, and I've talked about how it's helped me loosen up in a crowd, to not feel so judged and things like that. And there's actually science that's behind that, and the things that happen in your brain to help you bring down anxiety and get into a better mood and many different things. But what I didn't know is how that I wasn't so alone in my thinking, I guess, or in my experience, I should say, because I knew what it was doing for me. I know maybe just a couple other people who battle addiction that has helped them, but ketones have helped so many people already in so many different areas that it never really stood out to me as far as helping with addiction. And that wasn't until just this last weekend. The number, not just the number of stories that were shared about overcoming addiction and being clean since drinking ketones, that in itself was shocking to me, because number one, I can relate, but number two, I was like, holy shit, I didn't know it was on such a large scale. I thought it was kind of just me type thing, like most of us do in life. Like that only happens to me, or this is only my story, no one else feels the way I do, and all of that shit that we tell ourselves. But so just the sheer number of stories was one thing, but then the magnitude, the depth of how impactful it has been for people being clean. And we know that just in general, when people get clean, how much their lives change, or how they, and not only just clean, but even like just dealing with anxiety and dealing with things well, I guess that you would take medication for, and maybe abuse medication for. So obviously not just alcohol. There was stories of many different substances. Anyways, just the depth of the change and the radical change that not only occurred for these individuals sharing their stories, but how, because of sharing their stories, how many other lives were affected with people who are dealing with the same thing. And so I know that, like, obviously there's groups and support groups and things like that for addiction, and overcoming and things like that. But there's a whole nother level, there's a whole nother layer, I should say, of support and community above and beyond addiction. Not just overcoming addiction, but overcoming addiction, and then maybe also overcoming some other fears in our lives, and maybe also adding in some maybe healthier lifestyle choices, and then maybe also adding in some better financial choices, and then maybe also leveling up in like all these different areas in your life, because now there's not just one, and I don't mean to sound like now, but realizing that there's not just like one type of support group, if that makes sense. I hope I'm kind of being clear on that. There's not just one type of support group. There is a large and possibly many different types of support groups, but that go along with when you're adding a different fuel source into your body besides carbs and sugar shit. When you're adding a clean fuel source into your brain and body, I know how much it helps me with when I'm dealing with wanting to drink. I know how much that helps me. I don't talk about it a lot because, again, like when I started this video, I always feel like it's just me, and it'll kind of sound silly if I say that this is actually what's happening. But like I said, over this past weekend, I realized that it's not just me, and there's a lot of people who are experiencing the same thing. So I guess I just wanted to touch on that and share that, because I've been there, I've been through it, I've been through a lot of shit, and I know there's a lot of people going through a lot harder stuff than I ever went through. And I heard some of those stories over the weekend, and if those stories can just get shared, if I can share my story, if someone can hear their stories, and someone's life changes because of that, then it's worth sharing, right? So that's why I had to pull over and share this. I mean, there's a power in knowing that you're not alone, obviously. And then having something that can help, that's healthy for you. You know, a lot like a lot of people, obviously, when they quit, and I'm just talking about drinking, for example, quit drinking, they dive hard into coffee and cigarettes. You know what I mean? It's like switching addictions. And even for me, I kind of switch into like working out, and I like, you know, I'm black or white, you know, I'm all in or all out typically. That's just me. I have a really addictive personality with everything, and you can use that for good, or it can be used for bad, you know. And so switching it to make good choices. So I know that if I know that drinking ketones is healthy for me, it's good for my brain and body, and it also helps fight addiction for bad things, including carbs and sugar, then it's just a win-win. But again, when it comes to the addictive substances that get abused, and that sometimes feel uncontrollable, ketones help. They do. I stand behind that 1000%. And just being reassured that over the weekend brought so much certainty to relay my message out to more people, that if you haven't tried that, I'm not saying that, hey, it's some freaking magic pill and your whole world's going to change, but it might. And if it doesn't, then what? You know what I mean? So there's nothing wrong with putting something really good into your body and see if it creates a positive result for you, as opposed to constantly putting in the negative, knowing that it's going to be a negative result, right? So, and everything comes down to wanting to. You know, everyone can, we can all open doors for anybody, but it's up to that person to walk through, and I get that. But sometimes hearing the story helps. And so what I'd like to leave you with is that two things. Number one, events change lives. If you can get to an event of any kind, you will see that you're not alone with whatever you're going through and whatever you're dealing with. And number one is that you can reach out to me anytime behind the scenes. It doesn't have to be on here. It doesn't have to be like that. You can just private message me, and we can talk about the message that I'm talking about right now. And the reason why I said two things, number one, because one's not more important than the other. All right, guys, thanks for listening. Love y'all. Talk to you later.